You once said that your career was going fine, and then Jim Cornette started to manage you.
Yeah.
You've got to give us some Jim Cornette stories, maybe
No,
from
yeah,
TNA, from
yeah.
Memphis.
I told Jim that. I said, Jim, I had a good career. Then I met you. Of course, he laughed. Well, the story about Cornette that everybody tells is his hatred for Vince Russo.
Mhm.
And I was in TNA, and I think we Russo wasn't there, or he had gone home. I think this was after, I don't know, but he wasn't there. We were doing okay. We were doing great, really. And then Jeff Jarrett and him and his daddy and Dixie Carter, they all owned shares in TNA. And Jeff got it in his head. He wanted to bring in Cornette, which I thought was a great idea. Jeff's very good. I mean, Jimmy is pretty good at figuring out stuff backstage, knows how to get heat. Because he's a student of the business. So is Jeff, so am I. I think to be in this business, you have to be somewhat of a student of it till I quit studying it.
Hmm.
So he came in and he was there about 2 months. And then Vince, and I like Vince because he's a hard worker. He has, there's some people who don't have any ideas. Vince has too many. He does. He has 1,000 ideas. And I think Vince's problem is he doesn't know how to regulate them. And if he has an idea, he'll throw it on top of another idea in the same match, which is, I mean, you're beating a dead horse there. So you can't take this match and make it a lumberjack match, then put barbed wire around it, and then throw something else on top, exploding bombs. He would throw it all together. So anyway, Jimmy came in, and then I heard that Vince Russo was coming in. So Jeff asked me, he says, God, we got to tell Jimmy. I said, you want me to tell him? He says, do you mind? I said, well, yeah, Buck, yeah, I mind. But I'll tell him. So I said, Jimmy, come here a minute. Let me talk to you. He sat down. He said, yeah, what is it? And when somebody calls you over and said, hey, can we talk? And they sit down, it's like it's pretty serious. I says, I just got to tell you something. I want you to know so you won't get caught, blindsided by this. But Vince Russo is coming back in. And he went, I quit. He quit on the spot. I says, Jimmy, don't quit. Please don't quit. It'll work. It'll work. I'm trying to, and I don't know if it'll work or not. That's just what I was saying. I was just trying to calm him down. And then I went and told Jeff, I says, well, he quit. No, he didn't. I said, well, I guess I'm a liar. Yeah, he quit. He's going to leave. He's leaving tomorrow morning. He's going to finish today and he's going to quit. So Jeff went over there, and I don't know what they talked about, but Jimmy ended up staying, but it was, and I actually kept them like apart for a while because I didn't want them to overlap, and it worked for a while, and then it worked till it didn't. Let me say that.
How long was it before they even would go in the same room or even talk to each other?
Well, they had to go in the same room in the morning. It was the production room. So that's where we would go in there and we would talk about, the show and who had interviews and who was going to handle what. So we had to all get together in the morning about 10 o'clock. But they never really crossed each other's path for the rest of the day. That's the way Jimmy said he wanted it. That's the way I think Vince preferred it. He didn't say he wanted it that way, but I think he preferred it. And there's a lot of long-standing animosity between Jimmy and Vince. So, and I don't think it'll ever leave Jimmy because Jimmy still hates him. And Vince, I think, he just went on. So, but to me, I told Jimmy, it's not healthy to really have that much dislike for another guy that, sometimes you have to work with. I said, because, I don't know, I think the tension, and Jimmy has high blood pressure anyway. And when he goes off, brother, it's like a volcano erupting. Now, he's never gone off on me, but I've seen him go off on other people. I just sit back in the corner and go, oh God, here we go again. And I love Jimmy to death, but I understand how he is and I understand what drives him. So, see, I was the first guy that Jimmy ever managed in Memphis. Here's a trivia question. Who was the first person he ever managed?
Oh, it's not the Galaxians or something. No, was it a woman?
Pretty good.
Damn. I don't think it was like Lil Annie Kai or something, but I can't remember.
Sherry Martell.
Sherry Martell.
That was the first one he ever managed. But nobody much knows that trivia question. But and
I should
he
get
didn't
half a
last
point
long
at
with it,
least
of
for
course.
that.
Yeah, you do to get a point. That's very good.
Jim Cornette or Vince Russo, and working under both, or with both, I should say.
You know, I don't have an issue. I love Jim Cornette because there's only one Jim Cornette. I mean, I wish everybody in the wrestling business was like Jim Cornette. I really do. You know, would it be a better business? I probably not. But would it be more fun to be in? Yeah, definitely yes. Jimmy has got the greatest sense of humor and the greatest. I've drugged Jimmy out of production meetings with high level WWE officials so many times I can't count the time, and the countries that I've had to drag him out of the meetings because he was coming over the table after one of the higher shots.
Was that Kevin Dunn by any chance?
I'm not naming names, but I took the guy with the initials KD, yeah. And I'd grab him on one shoulder and Bruce would grab him on the other shoulder, and we'd walk him to the elevator and punch his floor that made sure he got on the elevator, went to the right floor, you know. And so Corny, I love him to death. I mean, you know, we got to all evolve, and I'm glad that Jim Cornette hadn't evolved because we need one guy in the business like a Jim Cornette. I love him to death. I love listening. I laugh, and sometimes, you know, he makes a lot of sense if you read between his lines there. But what a historian, what a collection of history that he has, you know. I got nothing but big-time respect for Jim Cornette.
You worked with Ric Flair on the main event of some pretty big shows. I'm going to bring up Starrcade 86, but it's not going to be the question you think. The semi-main event, the scaffold match between the Road Warriors and the Midnight Express. Were you watching that in the back when Jim Cornette?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I thought to myself, I thought those guys were crazy. I'm like, I went with the first time they set that scaffold up, I went down to the ring and I was looking at that thing. I'm like, there's no amount of money in the world to get me on that thing. Don't even ask. Because I'm like, that's crazy. Of course, evidence of that would be when Jim Cornette did the drop and you know, basically busted both his knees. And I guess Ray Traylor, was supposed to be there to catch him, but I'm like, really? I'm like, I know Ray's a big guy, but he's supposed to catch Jim Cornette. Okay, whatever. So yeah, I think all of us were watching it with anticipation to see exactly what was going to happen. And of course, in a sense, you might say we weren't disappointed. I mean, you know, the fans got a good show.
Yeah,
but
they got the money's worth. Do you remember him getting sort of carried through the back when you were sort of getting prepared?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was memorable.
Well, speaking of memorable, I was hoping for some general Jim Cornette memories. What was he like backstage in the mid-'80s? Because I remember I wasn't even born then. I remember stories of the very early 80s and late 70s where Jim would talk about, before he was even a manager, where he'd say, God, if he can get so much heat with the boys when he's not even wrestling or managing or anything, think how great he'd be in front of the cameras.
Well, Jim Cornette's one of a kind. I mean, his personality is what it is, even to this day. And I don't know that he's really any different or much different present day than he was back then. He did have a tendency. You know, he was a manager and would, you know, and was proficient at running his mouth, whether he was in front of a camera or behind the scenes in a dressing room. And much to his credit, I will say this: he always had a great mind for the business, had some very creative ideas. So he really did fit into the wrestling role very, very well. And I think one of my one memory about Jim was in a transition time when, the rumors were flying around that Jim Crockett Promotions was maybe going to close its doors. They had run into some financial difficulties. I just remember being in Savannah, Georgia, and Crockett had called all of the guys on the show back, into this big room in back to kind of inform them of, if you want to say, kind of give a State of the Union. And I remember Cornette jumping up on this big table and just kind of sharing his thoughts. And in a sense, you might say, just putting it out there for the boys. So even though he's at times might have had heat with some of the guys, I really gained a lot of respect for Jim that day to really stand up. And I don't remember exactly what he said, but just the fact that he was willing to say something where the rest of us were just kind of looking around, like, oh man, what are we going to do? So it's a memory of Jim Cornette.
Jim Cornette.
My father said to me, if you don't have anything good to say about someone, don't say nothing at all.
Oh, okay.
So let's go to the next name.
Okay, then.
I'll tell you why. No, let me be honest. Let me be fair for the fans. Jim Cornette, I always liked a lot. Every time we crossed paths in the dressing room, hey, you doing, Jock? Hey, you doing, Jock? Always excited. How you doing? I met him in Memphis, Tennessee when I was working for Lawler in the 80s, the early 80s. I met him quite a few times. And he always had this nice way when he met me. And then some people start sending me some videos he was doing, some podcasts, where he was saying things like, oh, Raymond was a nice guy, but Jacques was an asshole. He was a real asshole. And he started cutting me down and things like that. And when that happened, the guy asked me my comments on that. And I told him, I said, well, when you talk to Jim Cornette, you give him a message to me, from me. I still like you, Jim. I always liked you, Jim. I'm just very sorry to see that you weren't wearing the same face you did when you met me, that when you did the promos you do, because I didn't know you like that. And so I don't know whether you really think that, or were you just trying to join the guys where I had heat with. But to me, you were always nice to me. And I always, when we cross paths, we're always saying hi, and talk. So I don't have anything bad to say about him, to be honest with you.
Okay. See, when I choose these names, these are generally random, just off the top of my head, apart from Jim Cornette that I always ask about. So if we're going on OVW's greatest hits as far as trainers go, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention, of course, Jim Cornette, my favourite. When he came aboard mid-1999, I believe?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I mean, we had, we started doing TV about 97. And looking back now, Danny Davis was learning how to do TV and getting prepped because he knew the deal with WWE was coming, and we had to have a television product. So it was all of us students and Rip, and it was, it was a good product, but not all the students were great athletes or, great performers, but everybody was having fun. And then 1998, Cornette shows up. The first recruit he had was Rico Constantino. And Rico we saw on WWE TV was very different than the Rico that came to OVW. He won the American Gladiators. He was a policeman. He was an EMT. He was the bodyguard for the faith healer Benny Hinn's. He was a bodyguard for Kiss. I mean, he was almost a U.S. Marshal after 9/11. I mean, it was like this guy's got like a resume of stuff that is phenomenal. And he had his own American Gladiators belt, and he was, ultra babyface. But then he ended up injuring his knee, and he had to shift his performance, and that when he became a heel. And it was really good. But like Cena came at that same time, Batista came, Brock Lesnar, Shelton Benjamin, Victoria.
Well, I'm going to get on quite a few of those names as well. I've got a couple more Cornette questions. I'm a big Cornette fan. When was the first time he ever lost his mind at you or someone near you?
At me? I knew him a while before he lost his cool at me. But I remember, and I told this story not too long ago, he would always put like the Danny's guys, myself, Doug Basham, Damaja, and Flash, and Rob Conway, Flash Flanagan. we were all the guys that had a little bit of experience. So if we're doing TV, we're doing it live to tape. So he didn't want to do any editing. So he put us in the last match so we could hit the time cue at the very end so we didn't go over. And the first time Cornette put Randy Orton against John Cena in the main event, they went over like 2 minutes and 19 seconds. And I remember Cena's coming back all proud of his match because it was a good match, taking off his tape, and Cornette kicks in the locker room. God damn, 2 minutes and 19 seconds. You know what the fuck that means? 2 minutes, you son of a. And Randy conveniently snuck out and just went home. Cornette goes out back and starts breaking windows. The building was, half the building was abandoned, so it wasn't a big deal, but breaking windows and coming back in, 2 minutes and 19 seconds. You know what that means? And Cena said himself, he goes, that was the last time I ever went over on time.
So it was 2 minutes 19, that was that, and he couldn't even edit it down, so he went just live to tape and that was it.
Yeah, they ended up having to edit it down, but they were trying not to do it. And then that would, if they would just run it the tape, they could hand it into the TV studio. Now they had to go and edit it, and it was going to take them 4 or 5 hours to trim a couple seconds off each segment, and just a hassle.
Right, I'm gonna hit you with the hard question now, and it is no pun intended. Did Jim Cornette and his girlfriend at the time, Sin, ever proposition you at any point? Because apparently only this came out recently, and I had no idea.
Me, no. Their relationship was, they were both happy doing exactly what they did. But there was one time where he was editing a little bit of TV or doing some voiceovers, and she liked to go out. So he's like, hey, will you take her to the bar? I'll show up a little bit later and pick her up. And he'd been out to the bar a couple of times, but he didn't like going out to the bar, but she wanted to go out. So we're out, bum, bum, bum. And she goes, well, hey, I'm going to go see if this guy will buy me a drink. And she walks off. And I can't remember if I just lost her or if I ended up finding her by the end of the night and had to take her home. But regardless, Cornette came and he couldn't find her. And then he got pissed and he left. So I think I must have had to take her home, and she was just sloppy drunk. It was bad. And Cornette was throwing a fit. He was screaming down the hallway that he's ready to shoot me, and just, it was the worst thing ever. I got fired and everything.
Oh, blinking heck. I mean, he threatened to shoot Brock Lesnar as well, I think, at one point, didn't he?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, after a while, that wasn't a big thing. It was just him blowing off steam and just getting excited.
I like it. It's just like not a big deal. That he threatened to shoot everybody one time or another. Jim Cornette and Tim Horner seem to have a decent relationship starting, and then was it Tim Horner was trying to do his own thing? Was he trying to get more power in the promotion, or where was the friction?
I don't think there was friction. I don't think Tim. I have a very different perspective of Tim than Jimmy. I've heard Jimmy rip Tim to shreds. I think Tim's wife was in his ear going, "You should be the big star." I think Tim is an aw shucks down home guy. Doesn't want to. I think that's why Tim never was big. He wasn't a politicker. He's just, I'll show up for work, I'll punch in and do my job and punch out. But I think his wife was like, "You're the hometown star. You're from Morristown." So I think his wife was kind of in his ear. I don't think Tim ever, to me, did anything malicious until maybe towards the end. He might have been like, all right, fuck this guy and screw him. But initially, Tim is just such a good old boy, such a nice, straight. The guy's in church every Sunday. He's not one of the wrestling con men, but where their fallout happened, I think Tim wanted to be bigger. I think he would have thought he was a bigger draw, but we used him the whole first year. And he didn't draw, outside of his own hometown. He just wasn't. He got a good reaction from the people who'd already bought a ticket to see somebody else, but I don't think anybody ever bought a ticket to see Tim. So if that's fair. Yeah.
Did he try and start a rival promotion somewhere to run opposite, or am I misremembering there?
Not that I've never heard that before. No, he was. Yeah.
Sorry, probably. Sorry, that's just me misremembering. But please carry on.
Yeah, no, he, like I said, he had the wrestling school there. He had a screen printing business in town. He was also a parole officer. I mean, Tim was like a man. Tim walked around Morristown and people knew him, but it's a small town. But I mean, he's a well-known guy. But where Tim came in good with me, where he got over with me, was Tim was in charge of merchandise. I'm scraping by. I'm not making any money with Jimmy. I'm just hanging on. Tim says, hey, I need someone to dub our merchandise tapes, because this was, of course, pre-internet. So we sold tapes all over the country. Our show had a pretty good range there in that area, that 4-state area. But tape trading was hot. amongst inside wrestling, especially the New England guys. There were some California guys. So people from all over the country would order our tapes. Tim says, if you'll dub them, we sell shows, an hour show on a VHS tape for $10. I'll give you $2 for every tape you make. So I'm doing the math. I'm like, this is great. I can probably do a whole extra week's pay just every month off this. They kind of became my salvation and my albatross, these damn tapes, because it helped. Because when Jimmy brought me on, and I don't mind sharing these numbers now, I was making $150 a week, $600 a month. I mean, that's not even my rent these days. So it was not much money. The issue with the tapes was I got the 2 master machines from the studio. They play this 1-inch VHS. You dub it down to a normal 3/4-inch tape. So in my apartment, we had that little closet where in a lot of places you have your washer and dryer. We didn't have washer and dryer. So on cinder blocks and 2x4s, I set up these shelves. I take these 2 machines. I get 2 VCRs, and I'm dubbing. But you can only dub at normal speed. It takes an hour. I can't. Well, okay, you can do about 8 or 10 of those a day if you're constantly sitting there punching in tapes, taking them out, writing labels, putting the thing, tag them, sending them off to James. So it was an all-day procedure. However, now I got to hit the road and I got to make deliveries. Well, I can't. So it just became an issue. But Tim helped me make more money when I wasn't making any money there. And I have a note in the journal I kept, and I wish I knew what it meant. But I kept a journal, and after I left, it said, everything Tim told me came true. And I don't remember what he told me when I started, except I think it was something to the effect of, they'll use you. Be careful. They'll use you as long as they need, use you as long as they can. And then, so Tim was okay with me. The fallout with him and Jimmy, I consider the source,
Creative differences we could maybe.
Let's call it that way, yeah. Yeah. Jimmy was pretty high strung, and everybody crossed him at that time. So, yeah.
I know you watch wrestling and everything, and you're the same as me. You're a big Jim Cornette fan. I'm a big Jim Cornette fan. I believe we both sort of subscribe more to Jim's point of view than maybe, let's say, Tony Khan's. Just to pluck a name out of the air for someone who's very involved in the modern wrestling. With WWE, with AEW, what you've seen, what do you like about them, both companies, and what would you prefer go back to sort of a bygone era?
Yeah, Jim is definitely a polarizing figure, isn't he? You either love him or hate him. I think he's personally, I can see why he's got a lot of heat, but I agree with a lot of things he says, man. It just makes sense to me about psychology and storylines and what he would do. He always gives examples. To me, it's like, that's a source that if you want to, and of course people might disagree and say, well, it's past his time. He doesn't get today's wrestling. And I get that. It's a different era. It's a different generation. Just like, with the Adam Cole thing, the Daniel Bryans. I mean, these are smaller guys, but I get Daniel Bryan. I get that. But, and I get CM Punk now. I didn't at first, but I get him now because he's so real, so authentic, organic, that connection with the crowd. I like the realism of pro wrestling. And I think that's the magic of pro wrestling, is when you can take reality parallels and you can intertwine that with the fiction and the work. And then the smart marks, or you're at home going, I know this is pro wrestling and it's set, it's choreographed, but I think there's some real emotion here. And then you question things when you start blurring the lines. I love that. To me, that's great TV. That's magic. And I think Jim's funny. I can see why he ruffles some feathers. I don't agree with everything he says. Some of his political comments, I'm no comment. But anyway, point being is, I think he's a wealth of knowledge. And I think even his ideology and his beliefs of how wrestling should be portrayed, I agree with. And I think that today's product could learn a lot from him. Just listening to that podcast, they could get a lot of ideas where, I mean, I know if I was wrestling right now, I'd be listening to that podcast every time to see what he does say about my matches and critiques me and gives examples and what I would have done. And it makes you think, I mean, for the next time, or you just pick up things, this is just, it's just, to me, it's great knowledge. Others will say he's stuck in the 80s or whatever, and it's not going to work in today's wrestling, but I disagree with that. There's this basic psychology. There's a reason why you do things when you do them to make sense. I think he's a wealth of knowledge, but I don't really, I watch both shows. I record them. I go through my DVR and I'll I stop it when I see Randy Orton. I want to see what they're doing with Randy. Brock, whenever Brock's out, I have the utmost respect for Brock, and I love realism. You know, I like Bobby Lashley too. I mean, these guys are just, you know, I guess they're larger than life. They're real athletes. It's what I'm attracted to, I guess. I'm just curious to see what they do with these guys, but it's difficult for me to get through a full show a lot of times. With AEW, I'm excited for them. I think it's great that there's they say it's not competition, but a wrestling fan can only spend so much money on pay-per-views and merchandise or whatever. So in essence, is it competition? Yes and no. I think that, it's definitely growing. They've got a lot of talent. Seems like every other week there's a new talent coming aboard. I think they have to be careful of not being spread too thin. I think they have enough talent to work on and focus on and try to develop and get over. I do see a lot of mistakes and things that they make. Even like I said, I agree with some of the things that Cornette says, but I'm just excited, man. I'm really excited for the pro wrestling business, and I'm pulling for them. I hope that they have all the success in the world, because that's great for the boys or the girls too, the talent. It's good for the wrestling fan. That's who wins the most, right? As a wrestling fan. And it's just good for business overall.
I was in Florida, as you said. Tommy Rogers told me, hey, Jimmy's opening this promotion. Me and Bobby's been working for him some up in your area. And I was like, oh, great. And I ran into him at the gym. He'd come over to Malenko's a couple of times, get some ring time before we went to Japan. And then he also worked at the same gym my brother and I did. And so he said, he said, would you be interested? And I said, hell yeah, because I'd already been talking to Robert Fuller about going to Memphis maybe, because he worked out the same gym as well. So they knew I was trying to work my way back up to my home area. Cause I grew up on this wrestling in this area, the old Memphis style, the old Southeastern wrestling and stuff. So anyway, when Tommy told me that, I said, yeah, I'd love to. He goes, what are you doing tonight about 9? And I said, I'll be home. Like I said, I live with my brother, we trained together, and it was really working out nice. And so Cornette didn't call. Actually, he did. I'm sorry. I called Jimmy. Let me reword. I called Jimmy that night about 9, and he goes, Bobby, I'm really busy. I'll get right back to you. I know who you are. I'll get right back to you. Something to that effect, but I didn't hear back from him. So next day at the gym, Tommy asked me, did Jimmy call you? And I said, yeah, but it's really brief. And I said, he said, call back, but he goes, he'll call you tonight. So that night at 9 o'clock, Jim Cornette calls me. Hey, Bobby, I'm aware of your name. Tommy spoke real highly of you. He says you work with Dean. You work like Bobby, or a lot with Bobby. You kind of look like Bobby. Send me some stuff. So I sent him a VHS tape and some pictures I had. Now this was in, and he said, I'm not full time right now, but I'm getting ready to go full time. So it's like February when the very first TVs are coming out, about 92. And I'm like, okay. So didn't really hear back from him. I came home in early June after mailing that package to him, and there was a Smoky Mountain show about an hour from my house at a town I'm very familiar with, very popular wrestling town. And I said, well, I'm not doing anything. I'm getting ready to go back to Canada. That's why I came from Florida back here, just kind of hung over to see my parents and family. So I drove up to that show, and I got there early. Here comes Cornette, and he comes in. And that's our first in-person meeting. And shook my hand. He goes, Bobby Blaze, we started talking, and I had some new promos and another video, and we sit there and talked for probably 20 minutes. And he said, are you going to stick around to the show? I said, I'd like to. He goes, yeah, do. He goes, when you watch the show, see where you think you might fit in here at. And I said, oh, okay, great. So I had already known a couple of the guys that's on the show. So I went to the babyface side, and I knew Robert Gibson a little bit, Brian Lee just a little bit, and Scott Armstrong was there, but I didn't know him at all at that point. I knew who he was, of course. And Brian was like, hey, you think about coming in? I'm like, I hope so. Let's see what happens. I've got another tour lined up, blah, blah, blah. So after that tour, I called him again, and I had just a couple weeks off, and off to Australia I went. And when I got right back from Australia, Bobby Fulton called me, put me on a show. The next week, Cornette called me and said, hey, Bobby Fulton really put you over too. So now I got Tommy and Bobby and, this and that. And Corny calls me and says, hey, you want to have a tryout match And I was like, yeah. So it took 9 months, you know, from the first contact of that. And then I went to Beckley, West Virginia. And that's where I had my tryout match against Brian Lee. Jimmy took us into the bathroom. I'm like 6'1", you know, 220 at the time, something like that. Here's Brian Lee's like 6'8", 280 stacked. And Jimmy, we'd already talked, Brian and I had, like even before. And Jimmy said, hey, Bob, you have any problem putting Brian over, do you? And I'm like, he goes, he's our first TV champion. It's not, that's what I did. I looked, I go, dude, what's your finish? I said, it's no problem, whatever you want. And Brian goes, well, I do this thing, shoulder breaker. And he goes, real easy. And Jimmy goes, Bobby, just go out there and give me 10 minutes. And I go, Brian, you want anything special? He said, you're the heel, call the match. So I got there and worked the match. Cornette come up to me afterwards and said, hey, you know, let me keep my eye out for you. And about a week and a half, 2 weeks later at the Bluegrass Brawl, Robert Gibson blew his ankle out. And he was coming up in Pensacola at the time. And Corny called me and he said, Bobby, I got a 3 or 4 day loop. Can't remember. It's right up in Kentucky, all within a couple hour distance of my home. And he said, would you like to fill in on a card? So I said, I'd love to. So every night I worked with Tom Pritchard for the first 3 nights. And then they moved, Tim Horner moved up on the card and made a tag team with Ricky, I guess is what it was. And then Tom worked twice. And I'm like, man, that's good experience because I'm in the very first match with Tom Pritchard. And then Jim Cornette is right there managing. So he can see my stuff, you know what I'm saying? And then, and Tom would do, you know, power bomb, boom, 1, 2, 3. But it was a good even match, 15-minute match opener, you know. And like the 4th night, Mark Curtis came to me and he said, Bobby, what's your finish? And I go, what? I'm going to put Tom over. And he goes, no, we got a guy we brought in and he's going to put you over tonight. And I go, okay. And I go, who is he? He goes, a guy named Mike Sampson. And he's on a lot of Smoky Mountain tapings. And I knew Mike from the Independents. And I said, oh man, I know Mike. And I said, just tell him to watch the drop kick off the top rope. Because I've been really tweaking at the Northern Light suplex, but I wasn't real confident in it at that particular point. Because I was just training with Dean on that right prior to leaving Tampa. Anyway, went out there and got a win and, you know, that put me over. Someone here likes me, you know. Then I won the Battle Royal later on that night. And from there, I went and done one more house show with Taz was leaving. And Jimmy called me and said, Bobby, I don't have you on a booking sheet, but this is in West Virginia. How close are you to this town in West Virginia? And I was like an hour and a half away. I told him, he said, well, can you be there? I was like, yes, sir. You know, so I drove up there and it was Taz's last day and it was last day of their loop. And I got to work with Taz before he went, you know, his Tasmaniac or whatever, before he busted out up in ECW. And that night, Jimmy came to me and said, you know, hey, would you like to come in? So, yeah, yes, sir, I would. And he goes, I was wearing old black trunks with black boots with red laces, red trim, BB, or, you know, that's just kind of in honor of Malenko. And he said, and I did have gear, though, that had flames all over it. But I just, you know, wasn't ready for that. He goes, you got some gear, if anything, it's more flashy. I said, yes, sir, I do. And I pulled it out and showed him. He goes, start wearing that. And from there, it was just a good relationship professionally and personally. You know, we kind of hit it off pretty good. As far as him going off, blowing a gasket, I've seen him do that a couple of times, but I'll just put myself in that situation. We probably only had one time that we butted heads, and it was completely my fault. But I was going to, I've heard him call someone else an idiot that didn't work at that company much longer after that day. You can probably put 2 and 2 together who that is. But I've seen him go off on people, you know. But in my situation, I think we only had one conflict, and I can understand why. So I was going to wrestle Larry Santos, who was a very good enhancement talent, and it was for TV. And then I didn't know this at the time, but the next match was going to be Killer Kyle, but he was going to be wrestling Mike Furness, and Furness was just breaking in, so he knew a football tackle, you know what I'm saying? And Mike was a hell of a good guy, but I for whatever reason, I'm at the top of the stairs with Bullet Bomb Armstrong and Larry Santo. So Bullock's going to go out because he's going to the announcer table. He's the commissioner. So we're all going to go out and go to our spots. And I had this little spot worked out with Larry. I said, Larry, just begin. I'm going to wrestle. I'm going to eat you up a little bit. And I said, didn't cut me off. And Larry could do it. Okay. Then I turned around for some reason. I said, Larry, as soon as I take my jacket off, just attack me. He goes, okay. Well, I get announced. I take my jacket off. He comes over and gloms me, whatever. Well, then I get on him, eat him up. Northern Lights, 1, 2, 3. I come through the back and there's Cornette. God damn it, Bobby Blaze. What the fuck are you thinking? He goes, you know a fucking, you've been trained by Malenkos. You know a million fucking holds and moves. And he's just chewing my ass on the stairwell, right? And he goes, and you got Larry Santo to work with, and you know he can work. He goes, God damn it, I got to change the next card. He said, because I got Killer Kyle going out there against Mike Furnace, and Mike Furnace don't know jack shit. And he was supposed to attack Kyle, or Kyle was going to attack them. Kyle was going to attack him and just beat him up until the finish. And you done the same damn thing. And I was just like, oh, I did fuck up. So they had to slide in another match because they didn't want to see 2 matches in a row where basically someone gets attacked and then, because that's had Larry just attack me, then I just started eating them up and went home. So he had to throw a match in on that. So that threw his schedule off in his mind. Then he had to go back and tell Kyle, try to give him something more than what fucking Bobby Blaze gave Larry Santo. But the thing was, as soon as the show and a couple more matches, TVs, whatever, pressure's off, whatever, as soon as that was over, it was all good. And I knew I went over and I just put my head down and I looked at Robert Gibson and I knew he and I had to do another thing on that same taping. And I was like, I just lost my job, didn't I? He goes, no, man. He goes, as soon as this taping's over, he's already forgot about it. Fuck it. Don't worry about it. You sure? He said, Bobby, I've known Jimmy a long time. It's good. And I was like, okay. And then by the time next taping rolled around, it's forgotten, So, yeah, he can go, man. He can go off. And I like that about him.
Was Mike Furnace, right, so he was the brother of Doug Furnace, wasn't he? Was he the guy who could only do the tackle, and then he did a tackle so hard he ended up tackling himself out the ring?
Yeah. Hell of a nice guy, but just wrestling-wise, you'd never know. He's, Doug's brother. Just he come in, UT football player, worked hard. He was doing some dock work, and he was hitting the gym, and he was finishing, I think he's finished his graduate work actually. And he just really didn't catch on to the whole, wrestling business part of it, but yeah, good guy, good body, just nothing like his brother though.
So. You weren't on the Dairy Queen incident bus, were you? Okay.
I've been to that Dairy Queen, but no, I had no problems there.
When was the first? In fact, actually, I'll ask it this way: what was the smallest issue that you saw Jim Cornette have a complete meltdown over?
Well,
I'll sit back for this one.
Yeah, right. No, I think that there was a lot of look. Jim's a perfectionist. He's one of those people that it has to be in its place. I'm not sure if that's ADHD or whatever it's called. He has that disease, whatever it is, where everything has to be perfect. And if something's even turned the slight bit off, well, who touched the magazine? Who did this? You did earlier, Jim. Okay, fine. But I respect that, because what you see on screen is Jimmy. That he's not working. That's him. Backstage too. That could become a parody, and he could do that sometimes. But when he was in his working mode, when he was in don't mess with me, I have stuff to do, I have things to do, and I want to get it out. That's who he was. One time on I'll give you 2 times. We were in a town around here in Tennessee, and I knew what we were doing. I knew the angle, and we were working with Rock and Roll Express, who we have already worked with at least, I don't know how many times, even prior to teaming with Stan. I knew Ricky, I knew Robert. It was a night off every night, and I knew what we were doing. I knew the angle, I knew where we were going. But Jimmy wanted to get us all together to go over it. Well, I had walked out of the locker room, and I went up in the upper seats to watch the matches, to watch the first match or second match, whatever it was. And that was the time he picked to get us all together, and they couldn't find me. And so he took his racket. I didn't see this, but I saw the after effect. He took his racket, smashed it against a concrete barrier, and destroyed his racket. And when I came back in, he's still ranting and raving. And I hear Rick says, "Here he is, Jimmy." So where were you? So, "Oh, man, I just went to watch the match." So, "God damn it, I need to go over this match." I said, "I'm sorry. I'm not going to argue with him. I know he's got pressure. He's the guy running the whole show. So I'm not going to say, 'Jim, don't cuss at me.' I'm just going to say, 'You're right. I apologize.'" That's all I had to do. So he calmed down. So there's one. But another time, Bruiser Bedlam. Are you familiar with Johnny Kane? Okay.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, biker type blew up a police station, I believe.
Yeah, he was authentic too. He was the real deal. He was out of his mind. But Mr. Kettle, meet Mr. Pot. So it was me and Bruiser and maybe Jimmy Del Rey. We were Jimmy was cutting a promo in the ring, and he had all this information stored in his head. He had to plug the show, he had to plug the date, he had to plug 10, he had to plug the angles. As we're standing there, he's going to melt or fade into talking about this, into the next topic. And he had like 4 topics he had to get done within a 4-minute segment. And Bruiser and I are in the background, and we're laughing and we're talking and we're playing around, and he turns around and gives us the death stare because we're distracting him, starting to lose his thought, and he's stuttering, and it's not funny to him. So when we get back to the locker room, he says, "I can't have you guys back there laughing. I stumble in that, and I got to fix it in post. God damn it." And he went off into a rage. So Bob Armstrong came over to us and just said, "Bad boys." And we, of course, apologized. So those are a couple of things I experienced firsthand. I've seen him go off on other people, but it's just because that's who he is. And you have to accept it. And look, let me clarify this. I have nothing but love, respect, and admiration for Jim Cornette. Some people don't like him. Some people don't care for him. Some people believe he's just a bombastic asshole. Okay, you can be a bombastic asshole, but he really does care about the business. He's passionate about the business. If you work hard for him, he'll work hard for you. It goes back again, show me respect, I'll show you respect back type thing.
I don't know if it was like the end of 2008 to somewhere in the middle of 2009. There seems to be all the best people who worked for TNA behind the scenes, like you, Road Dogg, Jim Cornette, a couple of others. They all seem to get fired one by one, almost like it was like a Halloween movie. And then, and if Jim Cornette's to be believed, it was Vince Russo behind the decision to try and get rid of everybody and then put his crew in. And then,
one of the things that I hear was the lady, I forgot the name.
Dixie Carter.
Dixie. Something happened between Dixie and Jeff, and where I believe Jeff was leaving the company, or he was starting with his wife or something. Some gag happened there. Something that I even was involved. The only way that I was involved is because I was in a team with Dutch and Jeff. If you're in that team and we take over, of course, that team got to go, So that happened to me. What is the name? The Red Rooster. Terry Taylor. I'm in home, and I was thinking, okay, this week I'm going to work paying the house this, so check next week is going to be like that. When he called me, he said, "Savio, I'm sorry to tell you, but they didn't want to let you go because, something." I said, "Come on, man. Don't tell me that." He said, "Yes." I said, "That's bullshit." I said, right there. And that. He's like, "Well, you know, how is this business? I said, man. So I called Dutch, and Dutch say, they just called me too. I'm on the road going home, and they just tell me. I said, well, so we gone, man. I said, son of a bitches. He said, well, this is the way the business is. That's true. You know, it's politics. Dirty politics.
It's all politics. What did you think of Dixie Carter as a boss then? Was she in over her head, let's say?
I never have words, more than 5 words, I believe, with her. Never. She was in a high blah, 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 you know. And I mean, if you're a boss, you need to talk to everybody, all your employees, find out what's going on, how is the business, how is everything, you know. No, she was kind of a, you know, we call in Puerto Rico high chochetti, which is high
society.
Yeah.
I've got to ask this one question because I always love the answer. Jim Cornette or Vince Russo, and why?
No, to me, Jim Cornette. Jim Cornette. I like Corny. It's more down the earth with the reality of stuff. Of course, you could do anything in wrestling. Anything. It's nothing that you can say you cannot do that. Yeah, it's possible because it's life, and you're creating something. And Vince Russo maybe have that too, you know, which is good. But to me, corny.
I'm going to have to actually read this next question because it includes a quote. Sure. And it's from your book that apparently you never proofread.
Probably a lie.
Well, that is the actual quote. I'll preface this by saying Jim Cornette says, Kenny Bolin is a fucking liar. So in your book, I probably screwed you too. You basically blamed Jim Cornette for instigating the entire Montreal Screwjob and giving you phone calls.
Let me give you the absolute shoot on that. And this is my hand to whatever it is. I'm an atheist, but whatever it is you believe in, so be it. The absolute shoot on it is that we knew Bret Hart. And Jimmy did not like Bret Hart at all. I had actually never really met him. I just knew the stories I'd heard about him. So much like Vince Russo, I formed an opinion about him without even really knowing him. So I hated Hart. I hated Russo because Jimmy did. And then finally there came a point of time. I said, well, maybe I should meet some of these people. Maybe I should form my own opinion because Jimmy fucking hates everybody that disagrees with him. Shawn Michaels, all just the list goes on, even back then. But we knew that Bret Hart was leaving. We knew that he did not want to put over Shawn Michaels in Canada, regardless whether it was his hometown or not. I can't lose in Canada. Okay, so that means Shawn Michaels can't lose in America? Does that mean the British Bulldog can't lose in the UK? I mean, goddamn, I don't think we can do wrestling this way. So Jimmy was convinced that he was going to pull a Medusa. He was going to keep the belt. They knew he was going to be on Nitro like a few nights later after this pay-per-view, the next night, I believe. And but he was refusing to do the job. And I said, well, there's a way around that. And I swear to whatever it is you believe in, this is how the conversation went. I said, Jimmy, if they're that convinced that he's going to leave, I said, Hart will fall for this in a heartbeat. Put him in the sharpshooter. Of course, Bret Hart will be the only man who can escape the sharpshooter. He would never tap out on his own move. But the minute he gets the sharpshooter locked in, get the referee in on it. I had no idea who the referee was going to be at that point. Let that thing get locked in because he's got to milk it to get out of it. He's got to grimace. He's got to show he's tough, that he can get out of his own finishing move. Once he's in that thing for about 30 seconds, the referee says he gave up. Who the fuck's to say any different? Who can prove it? That's it. Ring the bell. He gave up. I heard him. I quit. And if you see how and for 3 weeks, they shit on my idea. Jimmy would go to Vince. Of course, Jimmy wasn't telling him it was my idea. Jimmy was telling Vince McMahon it was his idea. So, and I was fine with that. I suffered through that through WTBS Atlanta, that I would see my ideas ending up on television. I wasn't getting any fucking credit for it. He would never even call me and thank me. Hey, that was a great idea. That really worked. And my ex-wife can testify to that. My son can testify to it. People that have known me all my life. My ideas were showing up, especially on WTBS Atlanta and occasionally on Raw. I'm going to put Jimmy over in a minute on an idea he had that got shit on that they gave him no credit for. So for 3 weeks, they're shitting on the Montreal Screwjob. It was my idea how to get them out of it. Jimmy even told me to tell the story on who's slamming who because he wanted the story out there. He said, here's the great thing, Kenny. You're going to be telling the truth, but nobody's going to believe you because you're Kenny Bolin. You're a fucking con man and a liar. You take credit for everything. So the truth will be out there. And I can just say, well, that's Bolin. You know, I don't have to admit or deny that you're telling the truth. As it sounds great to me, I'll tell the fucking story. And if they don't believe it, who gives a fuck? At least the truth will be out there as to how the Montreal Screwjob came to be, that you and I were basically the instigators of the Montreal Screwjob. Well, Russo tried to take credit for it. Well, I knew for a fact Russo didn't have anything to do with it. He might have been in on the meetings. He might have been there when the idea was bantered about. I'm sure he was. Russo and Cornette were on the same booking committee at that time. But Russo wanted to take credit for it as well. He can take credit for hearing about it. He didn't come up with the idea. It was me, solely me. Jimmy even told me, Kenny, he'll never be stupid enough to fall for that. I said, he's got too big of an ego. He's going to want to get out of his own hold. Trust me, he will do it. 3 weeks go by. Vince shits on it. Vince shits on it. Jimmy swears now, in retrospect, that he never called me because we didn't have cell phones then. He didn't. He called me from a fucking payphone and says, Kenny, you got to see this. The shit's going down. I said, what shit? The Bret Hart shit. It's going down. I said, you got to be fucking me. He said, Vince has had it. He thinks that Bret's going to try to fuck him. It's going down. So I knew 2 hours before the pay-per-view that the shit was going to happen, or at least we thought it was at that point. It doesn't mean they're not going to back out of it. The only ones, according to Cornette, that really knew what was going on was Hebner, Triple H, Shane, Sean, who denied it for fucking years. And that was about it. There weren't many other people that knew. There were a lot of people said they knew. Russo didn't know.
Probably Jerry Briscoe must have known because I think Jerry Briscoe would have known, wouldn't he? Because wasn't he teaching Sean protection?
I would think, yeah, he definitely knew because he went there to get Sean out of the ring because Sean was putting on like, this is fucked. I can't believe it. Did you see the performance Michaels put on at the end, acting like he was furious that they pulled this shit? He knew the whole fucking time. That was one of the greater performances you'll ever see because I knew Sean knew he had to know. And he's putting on his performance like, I didn't know anything. And then finally, years later, he admits that he knew. But he milked that for years that he didn't know shit. So when the match was over, now this is what Cornette tells me, is that Hart came back and punched Vince McMahon right in the jaw. Furious that he got fucked over in Canada, even though he was going to fuck Vince the next night if given the opportunity. Shane McMahon stepped in. Shane was going to beat Bret's ass. Jimmy told me that Shane is a legit fucking badass. He would have beaten Hart within an inch of his life. Vince said, no, that's okay. He gets one. I got that coming. He gets one. If he touches me again, do what you got to do. And that's the story Jimmy told me, is that Bret knocked the shit out of Vince. Shane was going to beat his ass. Vince said, no, he gets one. And he got it. And I think Triple H was even acting like he didn't know at that time, but he knew. And, but yeah, there were very, very few people that knew that. And I was so proud because that was my idea that I was told would not work. Now, Cornette shits all over that now, of course. All Jimmy's idea. I had nothing to do with it. I never called Kenny. We didn't have cell phones then. Yeah, we had a lot of fucking pay phones, you lying bitch. So, but no. And I was thrilled. And my son will tell you, my son was sitting there listening to the call. A friend of mine named Chris Turner was sitting there listening to the call. And they heard many of the calls where Jimmy and I were laying out the groundwork on how to keep Bret from fucking the WWE. So whoever wants to call me a liar, fuck you. I don't give a shit. I know the truth. I'm good with that. I've been telling the truth since 2008, I think, when I did it on Who's Slamming Who, maybe 2007. That's the God's honest truth. Fuck Cornette. It's not like he's known for telling a lot of the truth here lately. And I don't give a shit. I know what the truth is. I know people that listen to the phone calls that know what the truth is. Actually, now I'm not all that proud of it. I'm sorry I fucked old Bret over because I heard Bret likes me. and that he says that I have more respect for the business than Cornette does. I took that as a great compliment. I've got promoters in Canada that said Brett wants to meet me when and if I get to go there, which we're, as soon as they open the borders, me and Chris are doing appearances there in Canada, doing Q&As. And I hope to get to meet Brett, and I'll tell the story to him just the way I'm telling it now. And I probably owe the man an apology because I wish he had a fucked him now. So what do you do?
What are you going to do?
It's all hindsight.
Right,
well, there you go. Now, did you know any of those background stories, or had you heard that before?
I read it in your book.
Well, there you go. It's a good. If I'd only read my own book, I would know that you would know.